Johnny for the invite. And it's good to see you, George. I haven't seen you in a few years. I used to work for SIP too, and I used to often meet George when I was working down here in Wexford. So look, Pauline is our spokesperson, and I think you can see why, because she's absolutely fantastic. And I agree with the points that were made around it's not about what certain people are doing and all of that, but I do feel the need to say that it is due to government policy that we are in this situation, and I do think that does need to be stated, and we do need the political will to change things. Yes, working together is brilliant, and I know Pauline does brilliant work on the Disability Committee and the Autism Committee, and they are two relatively new committees from an Oireachtas, from a Dáil point of view, which is a positive as well, because it is acknowledging that there is, so many issues to get through. But there is solutions. As Pauline has said, there is some short-term practical things that don't even cost money. There's a little bit of common sense which is lacking, not only in this system, but as I regularly say in the Dáil, I feel like in every second speech I say we need more common sense, because we just tend to have a lack of it in every single system. So there's an element of common sense, and then obviously we've been told time and time again it's not about the money. So if it's not about the money, well, that's actually half the battle. But then we obviously need to get the solutions in terms of, it's not just about assessments and therapies, that's one part of it. There's loads of other things that have been touched on today in terms of even basic access to getting onto a train, things that so many of us just take for granted. So I do think the solutions are there. It's about really pushing the political will to ensure that those solutions get implemented and get pushed into legislation. I just wanted to really briefly touch on issues around children and youth, because children and youth affairs is the area that I cover for the party. But just because it sometimes gets forgotten about, but even at a preschool and before preschool, in terms of creche places or childcare places for children with additional needs, it's nearly impossible. There is a programme called AIM, some people may be aware of it, but it only kicks in when you get to preschool. You don't have it before that, which means you can't get it before the age of 3, and a lot of people have difficulty accessing it because, first of all, there is a major issue in general in the childcare sector in terms of accessing places, so it can be even more difficult to get access an AIM place, and it might not provide the supports that are needed. So that programme needs to be looked at. It's not rocket science to look at that, to adjust it and to roll it out from the age of a child starting into the childcare sector into an early years setting. And also, certain places have specific ASD preschools, but not everywhere has that. Like in Kilkenny, which is where I'm from, we have only one ASD preschool in the whole county, and it is absolutely amazing. But I mean, talk about a waiting list. I don't even know what the waiting list is, because there's obviously they can only cater to a certain amount of children. So they are some of the kind of practical things as well that we could look at, because that in itself is, it's all about inclusivity. And then why should it be that when your child gets to 3, they should be entitled to ECC, but if you have an additional need you might not get it. And it's the same with what Amy was saying in relation to schools. It is such a battle to get a school place, whether it's in an ASD class or in a special school, and then there's the whole transport thing. And although I'm from Kilkenny, I represent both Carlow and Kilkenny. It's a 2-county constituency, so a lot of our constituency is rural villages, rural towns, and the battle for transport, and this thing about the nearest school rural, and yet the nearest school doesn't have a place, and it's constant, just serious frustration. I find myself getting frustrated, so I can't even imagine what it must be like as a parent every single year facing that same battle with the transport system. And then the attitude as well. I've always had an issue with the attitude that it's like, in a lot of cases that we deal with, maybe by the end of September, middle of October, a school place will become available, and they're nearly saying it to you as if this is great, but they don't acknowledge that child has missed out on potentially 4 to 6 weeks of school at that point. And let's say if I as a parent decided to stop sending my children to school, I would be getting a phone call or a letter or something from TUSLA saying they're over the 20 days. So why is it, it's nearly, it shouldn't be acceptable, but it's nearly become acceptable, and you will sometimes, and I'm not saying all of them, but certainly my experience is sometimes with CNOs, they're nearly like, well, this is just the way it is, as if we all have to just accept that. And it's important as well that we challenge that regularly, that it's not acceptable, as well as all of the legislation and everything, but that we just challenge it, that it's not acceptable in society to treat not just children, but from very young age, children with additional needs and then adults as second-class citizens. I can't remember who said it, but maybe it was one of the videos, but that point was made, and I think it is an excellent point. But just thanks again for the invitation. Anything we can do, we certainly will. You know, it is about working together and pushing, but I do think it's important that we do need a change of direction in government. It is possible to do these things, and when people sort of doubt that, just look at people who will tell you 10, 20 years ago it actually was better. So we're going backwards. So we obviously got some things right a number of years ago, and you know, I think it was yourself, Byrne, that said it about the change of policy in privatisation. And that's a disaster in every aspect. It's a disaster when you do that with public transport, because you lock out rural villages. Anything that you change to be privatised will always be profit driven, and that is definitely something that we have to challenge and not allow it happen. So thanks again, Jamie.